Good evening, everyone. Tonight's debate is on the topic of whether a hot dog should be considered a sandwich. We have Hank arguing in favor of the motion and John arguing against it. Hank, please present your constructive statement on why a hot dog should be considered a sandwich.
Thank you, and good evening to all. My position is simple. A hot dog should indeed be classified as a sandwich because it adheres to the fundamental characteristics that define what a sandwich is. The most basic definition of a sandwich is an item of food consisting of two pieces of bread with meat, cheese, or other filling between them. Now, while a hot dog bun is technically one piece of bread, it is often split into two parts that hold the hot dog sausage, the filling, within, effectively functioning as two pieces. This structure mirrors that of a sub-sandwich or hoagie, which is undisputedly categorized as a sandwich. Additionally, from a culinary standpoint, sandwiches are diverse in their composition, and a hot dog fits within the wide spectrum of fillings and bread types that are seen in sandwich menus around the world. Therefore, we must be inclusive in our understanding and recognize that a hot dog, with its bread and interior protein, fulfills the criteria of being a sandwich. The fact that it's commonly consumed in a similar manner to other sandwiches, typically with one's hands and often dressed with various condiments, further validates this perspective. Inclusion in the sandwich category should be based on structural criteria and the functionality of the food item, both of which a hot dog satisfies.
Thank you, Hank, for your thoughts. I appreciate the civil discourse on this appetizing topic. However, I firmly believe that a hot dog is not a sandwich, and I'll explain why. Firstly, while it is indeed encased in bread, a hot dog bun is specifically designed as a single piece that partially envelops the sausage. This is a unique configuration that is fundamentally different from the typical conception of a sandwich, which involves two distinct pieces of bread. The unity of a hot dog bun is significant. It is not merely two pieces connected by a hinge, but rather one piece of bread cradling its contents. Moreover, culturally and contextually, hot dogs are not treated as sandwiches. When people think of sandwiches, they seldom envision hot dogs. Sandwiches are typically on menus under a separate category from hot dogs, indicating a difference in how we collectively perceive them. From a culinary tradition standpoint, hot dogs have their own distinct category alongside hamburgers, which are also not traditionally considered sandwiches, despite having similar bread meat construction. Additionally, if we were to broaden the sandwich definition to include hot dogs, it opens the door to countless other food items that don't align with the conventional understanding of what a sandwich is. For example, would we start considering tacos, gyros, or even wraps as sandwiches? This would dilute the specificity of what we appreciate as unique food forms. Ultimately, a hot dog does not meet the classic nor colloquial criteria to be labeled a sandwich, and it should instead be celebrated as its iconic entity within the world of popular food.
Thank you, Hank and John, for your initial statements. Now it's time for the rebuttal round. Hank, please present your rebuttal to John's points.
I respect John's perspective, but allow me to dissect his points. The essence of the argument seems to rest on the physical attributes of the bun and cultural perceptions. However, we must refrain from restricting our definition of a sandwich based on the cut of the bread alone. If we did, we'd be excluding other widely accepted sandwiches, like the aforementioned subs or hoagies, which use a single bread roll split down the middle, quite similar to a hot dog bun. This is also the case with lobster rolls and even some pita sandwiches, which aren't fully bisected. As for cultural perception, while it's true that hot dogs are often in a different menu category, this is not a strong enough basis to exclude them from being sandwiches. Menu categorization is often subjective and varies greatly from place to place. As for hamburgers, there's indeed a debate there as well, with many people considering them a subset of sandwiches due to their structure and ingredients. Concerning the slippery slope argument, suggesting that broadening the sandwich definition to include hot dogs would force us to consider tacos, gyros, or wraps as sandwiches, I'd argue that each of those items have their bread encasing the filling on more than one side, which differs significantly from the two-side structure that is typical of sandwiches, which hot dogs adhere to. In sum, the exclusion of hot dogs from the sandwich category appears to be based more on tradition and less on any substantive difference in form or function. If we base our definitions on structure and ingredients, a protein served within bread, a hot dog comfortably fits within the sandwich family. We should embrace the evolution of language and food categorization to include the hot dog as a type of sandwich, celebrating its commonalities rather than setting it apart based on nuanced distinctions.
Thank you once again, Hank. However, your rebuttal, while thought-provoking, does not sway my position. The argument is not solely about the physical attributes of the bun or the mere cut of the bread, but rather about the overall essence and experience that defines what a sandwich is. The singular hot dog bun, which is customarily not fully separated, creates a different interaction with the filling than a traditional sandwich, which is generally fully bisected bread, with fillings nestled between the layers. On the point of cultural perceptions and menu distinctions, while they might be subjective, they reflect a collective understanding and a cultural consensus that has developed over time, distinguishing hot dogs from sandwiches. We navigate food categories based on these established conventions, which enhances our culinary experiences and sets expectations. If we disregard these familiar distinctions, then we risk creating confusion and eroding the culinary heritage that gives each food item its special place in our society. Additionally, your defense leans on comparing the hot dog to subs or hoagies. However, these items, while similar in bread construction, are commonly accepted and recognized as sandwiches, which is not the case for hot dogs. A lobster roll is another unique item that, despite having similarities in bread structure, maintains its own separate identity within food culture, much like the hot dog. As for including hamburgers as sandwiches, it is a contentious topic, and like hot dogs, they have garnered their own identity and cultural significance. Finally, the argument against a slippery slope is insufficient to justify the inclusion of hot dogs as sandwiches. Tacos, gyros, and wraps have a distinction in their bread type and method of preparation, which is why they are not seen as sandwiches, despite some similarities. In conclusion, maintaining the distinction between a hot dog and a sandwich honors the cultural, historical, and experiential aspects of these foods. It recognizes the specificity and tradition that come with each item, allowing us to appreciate the myriad forms food can take without stripping them of their identities. Thus, a hot dog remains rightfully in its own category, iconic, distinct, and definitively not a sandwich.
Thank you, Hank and John, for your passionate and well-reasoned arguments on the classification of a hot dog as a sandwich. After carefully considering both sides of the debate, it's clear that there is genuine disagreement on this topic, and both viewpoints have their merits. Hank presented a compelling case for the inclusion of hot dogs in the sandwich category, citing structural similarities and functional criteria, while John emphasized the unique qualities of hot dog buns and the cultural and culinary traditions that distinguish hot dogs from traditional sandwiches. In evaluating the debate, it's evident that the classification of a hot dog as a sandwich is not a clear-cut issue and is subject to varying interpretations based on individual perspectives, cultural influences, and culinary traditions. While the traditional definition of a sandwich may not perfectly align with the structure of a hot dog, the evolving nature of food culture and the diversity of sandwich forms around the world invite us to be open to broadening our understanding of what constitutes a sandwich. Ultimately, in the absence of a definitive, universally accepted definition of a sandwich, the categorization of a hot dog remains subjective and open to interpretation, and it may vary based on regional, cultural, and personal contexts. As such, it is reasonable to acknowledge that the question of whether a hot dog is a sandwich may not have a single, universally satisfying answer. We encourage our audience to continue exploring and engaging in discussions about food categorization and culinary definitions, as they play a meaningful role in shaping our cultural and gastronomic experiences. With that, we formally conclude this debate and thank both Hank and John for their insightful contributions to this thought-provoking discussion.